Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for May 12th, 2021. On March 12th, 2020, Governor Baker issued an executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law to enable public bodies to carry out their responsibilities while adhering to the public health recommendations regarding social distancing. The executive order relieves public bodies from the requirement in the open meeting law that meetings be conducted in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public, provided that the public body instead provides adequate alternative means of public access to the deliberations of the public body. In this case, that public access is being provided through Zoom as set forth on the meeting notice for this meeting. People can also follow along on television and also stream on the MATV website. Also, if people need the latest version of Zoom, they can call or email the Select Board office. Thank you very much. So with me this evening are Katie Conlon, Vice Chair, Arthur Doyle, Secretary, Richard Wells, Member, Michael Zulus, Member, Town Administrator Michael Dennehy, and our Executive Administrative Assistant, Hillary Waite. If everyone would join the board for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the flag
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and
justice
for all.
for all. Kate, that should be done.
Thank you. Our next agenda item before we get to our public hearing is public comment. Let's see. I just want to take a moment to see if anyone would like to speak. We'll be having public comment later for 728 Randolph Avenue separately under that agenda item, just so people know that'll be happening then. Attorney Mello, would you care to speak during public comment?
Madam Chair, I just my question to you, please, is whether or not the board will be taking further comment regarding the application of the fruit center.
I think that we should do that. Yes, you'll be free to speak during that time.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
So let's see if there's anyone else. Jennifer McCullough. Oh, no, you put your hand down. Okay, thank you. So we are, good evening. We're here to continue the public hearing for the application for amendment, specifically a change of liquor license classification for the Fruit Center, Inc., located at 338 Granite Avenue. Again, for the record, I'm Melinda Collins, Select Board Chair and Chair of the hearing this evening, and I'm joined by the board, Katie Conlon, Arthur Doyle, Richard Wells, and Michael Zulus, Town Administrator Mike Dennehy, and Executive Administrative Assistant Hillary Waite. Our special counsel, David DeLuca, is not able to be with us this evening. And we should also have two guests, the applicant, Mr. Michael Mignosa, and also, I don't know, Mr. Mignosa, if you have Mr. Modestino with you this evening or not. Doesn't appear that hello.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Will Mr. Modestino be joining you or?
Yeah, he's here. He should be on.
Oh, okay. (961) Is that you, sir?
I'm here, Ms. Collins.
Okay, great. And now you're with us. So welcome.
Thank you.
Before we begin, I would like to recap that the applicant seeks an all alcohol license in order to carry ready-to-drink spirits. Some examples are High Noon and Cutwater. We heard public comments on the first hearing date, and certainly to the extent that people, I think we heard Attorney Mello has something else he'd like to say. We'll take more. But we've also received some emails, including one today and a phone call or two, and received 2 petitions requesting the board to deny the application. The applicant was asked to provide an updated plan showing the locations of alcoholic beverages for sale, and the board did receive one that is consistent with the report from the town's licensing agent, Jennifer McCullough. Attorney David DeLuca has spoken with our representative at the ABCC and confirmed some important information. For one, this application was received 30 days ago. Therefore, the board's required to act on the application this evening. We can approve subject to finalization of conditions or deny the application. Conditions may include specification of allowed products, display footprint and placement. We have a draft amendment, which Mr. DeLuca has also reviewed. So again, so product definition, footprint, location, and I'd like to open it up to the board if they have any follow-up questions or comments for Mr. Mignosa. Yes, Mr. Wells.
I do have comments, Madam Chair, but I'd wait until any public comment is accepted tonight. If you could allow us that leeway at the end of the all public comment, that'd be great.
Yes, yes. Yes, Mr. Modestino.
We also have the wine manager for the Fruit Center online tonight, and he may want to make some comments as well, if that's permissible.
Okay. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we hear from the applicant first, and then we can hear more public comment, and then the board can follow up. Oh, excuse me. Ms. Conlon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question. You referenced the floor plan that we received. I thought the issue that we had at the last meeting was that the current floor plan exceeds what the original license allowed. So isn't that a decision that would need to be made, whether the current floor plan is proposed, whether we want to amend the license in order to allow for this? I think that was the issue.
Well, that is another, that is an issue, and that's what I meant by footprint.
Okay.
But yes, I think we acknowledged last time that that it exceeds the 200 square feet by, I think, 11 square feet. And so that's something that would need to be rectified. And, if the board chose to change that square footage, we could do that. Yes.
Thank you.
Of course. Yes, Mr. Zulus.
Madam Chair, just one thing, and I would, as Mr. Wells, reserve the opportunity to ask some questions later. But since the applicant is going to be making a presentation, if they could just address some of the things that Mr. Mello brought up last time. Some of them I think we've resolved, whether you could have restrictions and the floor plan, as you said. But one of the things was one of the considerations is the assessment of public want. And in light of the fact we have received a couple of petitions signed by residents, I'm particularly interested in the applicant's view of the assessment of the public want. So just a thought.
Thank you. Before we do go on, do any other members have questions or things they'd like to address, be addressed by the applicant? Okay, thank you. So please, Attorney Modestino.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson and members of the Select Board. I was going to ask Tim Paulus, who's on the Zoom tonight. I spoke to him earlier today, and he gave me some good indications about what the public has said to him and what he has experienced. And I think it would be best if he directed his comments directly to the board, and I think it would help show public interest, public need under the Ballerin case.
Okay, Hillary, could you please promote Mr. Paulus?
He's
Thank
on the
you.
way.
Thanks. Welcome, Mr. Paulus.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted, so my name's Tim. I've been with the Fruit Center since 2005 as the wine manager and the beer manager. And I feel with the 16 years of experience that I've had, I feel like I have gotten a really great relationship with our customer base. And as some of you know who shop there, we have a special connection with our customers. And to me, it's unlike a lot of other grocery stores that I've ever seen, where you sort of form a bond and you get to connect with people and find out what they want and what they're looking for. And you get to hear about, their hobbies and their personal lives. And it makes a huge part of what we do. And I think it's a big benefit of what we bring to the table as a company. And we really enjoy our connection with our customers. So obviously with that said, you get to learn a lot more of what kind of products they're looking for, whether it's, meats or cheeses or any kind of products that are trending. Certainly when it comes to my job, I'm responsible for listening to our consumers' inquiries on new products and products that are either coming down the pipeline or products that they're interested in. And probably at the end of 2019, I would say, maybe at the start of 2020, right around there, we started getting lots of inquiries, certainly weekly, almost daily, I would say, from customers looking for these products, these ready to drink, canned cocktails, spirit-based cocktails. So not only was I getting a lot of inquiries, working on the floor, talking to customers, but a lot of my colleagues were also letting me know on a weekly basis, hey, this customer asked for this, this customer was looking for that. And that's a protocol that we have at the company with any kind of product. We just pass along word to our managers of anything the customers are looking for, because we always try to acquire it for them. Certainly in this case, we haven't been able to do that with our current license. But these are products that I feel are a perfect fit for our clientele. They are, lower alcohol for the most part. They're in line with a lot of the craft beers that we sell. They're between 4 and 6, 7%. So a lot of them are even under some of the IPAs and double IPAs out on the market these days. A lot of them are made with fresh ingredients. They're spirit based. So for example, tequila or vodka, they have some flavors added. Usually it's fresh fruit juices, and it's generally a sparkling water. So they're very clean. They're simple. They're made for convenience. And they've seen a huge boom since obviously the pandemic has helped them, because a lot of folks haven't been able to go out to dinner, obviously. So the sort of the bartending aspect of a lot of people's lives has gone, and this fills that void for many people. And it's the trend for these products has been and will continue to be exploding. And that's what a lot of the folks that are in the industry that I've talked to, whose opinions I certainly trust and that I've read about, is going in that direction. I think that these are products that would fit our shelves, that would make a lot of our customers happy. And while we don't officially write down every time someone asks for a product, it's more a combination of taking our customers' requests, factoring in market trends, and also trying to be ahead of the curve of anything that's coming around the bend in our industry. So this is just a factor of trying to do all those three things that I just mentioned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paulus.
You're welcome.
Does the board have any follow-up questions for Mr. Paulus? Mr. Doyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Paulus, I think you gave me what would be your answer. I was seeking metrics, business practice that many of us are used to before new lines are brought into any particular chain of distribution system or outlet. Do you have any beyond the anecdotal information, please?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I couldn't exactly hear you.
I was asking whether or not any metrics existed, assuming that the expressions of interest have been occurring over a period of time.
Like as far as physical metrics, you know, have we, I'm just not sure I understand the question.
Can I clarify?
Yeah, please.
May I try to help? Okay. I think I asked Mr. Ringdosa last time if you keep counts of when people ask for something, and so that you know, well, we've had X amount of requests. I think I heard you say that you don't do that, that you do rely more on anecdotal information. And then you also factor in these other things such as market trends and trying to be ahead of the curve. So you're almost defining people's tastes in a way, you know, because you're there to introduce, it sounds like, people to new things as part of your work. But I think Mr. Mignosa said last time, you don't keep counts. I know I've requested things too. So that was interesting to me to know. So is that what you're talking about, Mr. Doyle? Do they actually?
Yes, and I do have a follow-up question, Madam Chair, and that is if there are any specific categories of the drinks in question that have been identified that you've logged that you know you want to bring into your line.
Yeah.
Have you been doing that type of work?
Yeah, so you know, Mike can also touch on how we factor in new product requests. But as far as, you know, the way that we work in the beer and wine department, you know, we communicate all the time, all of us employees, whether it's meeting together to talk about new products or new ideas or new thoughts. We meet with management to tell them, you know, things or ideas that we're looking towards. And, you know, I think it's probably one of those things where when we get enough interest, I don't have a specific number for you, but this to me has certainly been probably the highest asked for type of product that I have seen, right up there with hard seltzer in my 16 years. So it's one of those products that has just it's exploded in popularity. And I think our client base, which, you know, a lot of the folks are looking into that sort of health and wellness lifestyle, these categories, these products fit, the vast majority fit into that. So we're just sort of trying to coordinate having a product line that people are not only asking for, but will be looking for in the future as well. And as far as the product lines that specifically that we, you know, that people are asking for and that we would be interested in carrying, there's a company based off Nantucket, so 888 Cisco. It's a distillery. They have a product. It's a canned cocktail. One of the large companies out there, the larger companies, or most popular, I should say, is called High Noon. Those are also spirit-based cocktails. There is another company up in New Hampshire called Fabrizia. So a lot of these are New England also companies. So regional and local at the same time. Fabrizia makes canned cocktails as well. So, you know, these are all companies and products, and I could list a few more, but these are all some examples of what we'd be looking to carry.
Thank you.
Mr. Zulus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Paulus, I think you said that these products generally have a lower alcohol level, 4 to 7%. So if that's the case, if we had a restriction that provided that the alcohol rate had to be 7% or less, would that allow you to move into this product line?
Well, I said sort of that's as the majority. I would say the average. There are ones that are, you know, 10 and 11 and 12. So, you know, I didn't want to. I don't want to cut those out specifically, but I would say the average are between 4 and 7%.
So again, sorry, if we had a restriction at 12%, would that satisfy the product line need here?
I would say we're probably getting closer to where we want to be. I think 15 is probably the max. But I would say 12 is probably, that covers a lot of what we're looking to carry.
The reason we.
Thank you.
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Mignosa?
I'm sorry. The reason we had mentioned 15 as a restriction is only because a lot of the products we carry now, or some of them are actually in that range already. So some of the wines we carry are in the 14.5 or higher range. So, but certainly I don't think we carry anything over 15%, and we don't really have a desire to. But so that's why we originally proposed a 15% alcohol cap, because that would cover pretty much everything we would be interested in carrying, now and in the future.
And was that in your application? Sorry, the 15%, was that in the application?
I don't know if it was in the application. I think it was in a letter that I submitted to you.
Letter.
Oh, the letter, not the
Letter.
application. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Mr. Zulis's point, I spent the past week doing some research, and as you know, I was teaching on a Western Mass last week, and I looked at just one very popular place that exists in the town of Charlton out there. Mr. Paul's correct. Some of the IPAs today the percentages are pretty high. So I don't know if maybe the 15 is a good idea, but I just a little bit of history. As I mentioned in our last meeting, I think nearly every supermarket, Stop and Shop, Roach Brothers, Whole Foods, they're all in this. Farm Fresh, which is in Hingham, which is a similar type operation. Mr. Mignosa might not agree with me, but it's similar. But they have a full liquor there. They do sell the Nantucket Blue that Mr. Paulus refers to, that type. These ready-to-drink beverages have become extremely popular. I'm sure some of the beer producers don't like the challenge to it, but a very professional operation. But just internally, I even went to visit Lambert's and Westwood on Route 1, same type of operation. They all have AMCAS. They had a full license. They sold all three. But here in Milton, we have Craft and Crew, which is a full liquor license. It is exactly 52 feet from the front door to Central Liquor Store, and they've both coexisted there now. Both is Esprit de Vin, now Craft and Crew. And I don't think this board or any board, and including my time and my prior job, I've never heard a complaint in any way, shape, or form. So I do believe that this given the popularity and the fact that these do exist in other places and within our own community, two full licenses that close to each other, that we could probably do this.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Mr. Mignosa or Mr. Modestino, do you have anything else you'd wish to add?
I do. I wanted to address some of the points. I know board member Zulis had mentioned that at the last hearing that Attorney Mello had raised. Before I get there, I did speak to Attorney DeLuca. He was very responsive and very helpful and very knowledgeable. And I don't need to repeat what he had said. I had also called legal counsel at the board at the ABCC, Kyle Gill, and I spoke to him, and he echoed the same sentiments that you've heard as well. I know that Attorney Mello seemed to think that we had problems over the diagram, and I would agree that my client missed some of the areas in his first diagram that he did very quickly at my request because Jennifer McCullough had asked for it, and he left out some of the areas near the register area, and that's why our numbers were off. And I would agree that those numbers are at 211, and my client is willing to conform to whatever requirements you may impose. If you wanted to amend it, that would be fine, but they don't intend to go beyond 211, and if they had to go to 200, they would. In terms of other areas, I know that there was a statement made by Attorney Mello, as I understood it, that the markets and the supermarkets don't have similar licenses, and as a board member Wells had indicated, there's numerous places around that do have the all alcohol license, and we looked into it and we submitted some of those to the board as well with our materials. Stop and Shop in Hingham has a full liquor license, sells the same type of products. Whole Foods, Trader Joe's in Foxborough, Wegmans in Chestnut Hill, and Market Basket in Waltham. The space is limited in this store. They don't have a lot of space. They have meats, they have, vegetables and fruits, and they really don't have a lot to play with there. So they don't seek to expand beyond what they're presently doing. As far as the petition is concerned, I mean, obviously we're concerned about neighbors not liking this and not being pleased with it. And I've read the petition, and people have the right to object to these type of things. But I would suggest that this petition was drawn up by a competitor. And it's difficult if you go into a package store and somebody asks you to sign something and you know the person, particularly, that you don't sign it. So I'm more concerned about people writing in, or people providing emails, or people speaking at the hearing, and obviously they should be listened to. Attorney Mello also raised the issue of security. I think what he said was that the security in a package store is greater than the security in this type of setting would be. And, aside from some minor problems here and there that every store has with some theft of products, it's been a pretty clean operation for the past 17 years. And they have a good security force. And I would ask if Mr. McNosa could just briefly address his security detail that he employs at this particular store and how they operate.
So just briefly, it's its own department. We have 4 or 5 guys, depending on the time of year, that work in that department. We have at least one guy there on duty all the time. He's the last guy to leave the store at night. They lock up the store. We have a full camera system inside the store that has almost full coverage of the entire inside and some coverage outside the store. They are responsible for primarily employee safety, customer safety. They monitor the lot, traffic flow, truck flow, deliveries. They regularly patrol the fruit center as well as the rest of the building, and then respond to any concerns tenant-wise or fruit center-wise. And obviously they handle anything like theft, vandalism, accidents, injuries, stuff like that. So we have pretty good coverage in the entire building.
Thank you. Mr. Wells?
Let me lower, Madam Chair, so I don't forget to go back to this. Thank you, Madam Chair. So that was my question. Because going back to what Katie's point is, I think we have 2 issues before us here tonight. One is any possible amendment or change to the floor plan or to the space that exists or will exist in the permit. And 2, whether or not we approve this or deny this or approve it with any whatever conditions we put on it. So that's I wanted to ask the applicant, is 200 enough, or are you asking to go to 211? I want to. Katie's correct. Katie brought up, I think we need to address that.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right? Am I addressing that all right, Katie? You can just nod your head yes or no.
That was one of my questions.
Right.
I think that currently the issue was that the fruit center is currently not in compliance with its existing license because there's different sections of the store in which alcohol is displayed rather than the narrow area that's set forth in the license. And I don't recall the square footage, but Jennifer McCullough probably has that. So that was one of the issues.
It's 200 square feet.
Right, that's what the license is for, but they're at 211. So is that it, Mr. Wells?
So I'd like to hear from the applicant how they'd like to proceed with that. How they'd like to address that aspect of it. And then that's the one I really want to hear first, and then we can continue on what we're discussing, if possible. Because I think we're going to have to make a change one way or another if they are going to have to have it addressed. Michael's
Go ahead,
front.
Mr. McNosa. Yes.
Well, in a perfect world, obviously, we'd like to keep the footprint that we have, but certainly whatever the board feels is necessary, we'd certainly be happy to pull back and go to the square footage that we're supposed to be at. And my apologies for going over, but that is, I guess, up to the board ultimately, what they choose to do or what you choose to do moving forward.
I think I also hear, though, a real concern about, the footprint having moved beyond what was prescribed. And maybe that also has to do with some people's security concerns. I don't know if you have any, I mean, Mr. Doyle is the best of us on metrics, but I don't know if you have any metrics on, on thefts, especially of alcohol, or if you've experienced, especially minors, stealing something from an end cap or a place that, that the bakery or so, well, any area, so. Oh, so I don't know if you have an answer for that, but.
Was that directed at me? I'm sorry.
Yes, I mean, whoever among the three of you could answer it.
Well, I would argue, well, and I guess maybe I'm a little confused, but as long as we're within the 200 square feet, we were okay. As far as location goes, I didn't realize that was part of the.
There is location in your permit, and that was your license. So yes.
But so to that point, and I would argue that the places where we've expanded out from the actual, I guess, original footprint are much higher visibility areas than even the product where it is now. So I don't see that or view that as being a security concern or a theft concern, just because the traffic flow and the amount of people that are in the front of the store is all day much higher than it is any place else. So from my perspective, it's safer there than anywhere.
Thank you. Ms. Conlon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think that's the issue. Is I'm looking at the revised floor plans that you submitted, and the areas that are marked in red. Is the point that you're making that all of these areas marked in red in the aggregate come up with 211 square feet?
Right.
Okay, so I think the way the license is currently worded, there's one 200 square foot section of the fruit center building that is supposed to be the location for the alcohol. So I think that's the current requirement, and then that's the issue. Do we want to change that or keep that as it is? My other question was, and I think you may have answered this, but I just want to be sure. We have photos of several other stores that sell this type of product, including Butcher Boy Market in North Andover, Stop and Shop Hingham, Trader Joe's Foxborough, Whole Foods Ink Block, Wegmans in Chestnut Hill. Are all of these all alcohol beverage licenses, and if so, do they have any conditions similar to the one we talked about last week and that Mr. Zulus was alluding to about limiting the type that can be sold?
If I may, I know that the Stop and Shop in Hingham, I looked at it today, it's an all alcohol license. I'm not sure if there's any restrictions on that, but obviously they're selling similar products that the fruit center would like to sell if permitted. I don't know about the other stores. I mean, they're selling similar products, as you can see from the photographs, these ready to drink type of products. So I'm not really sure if they operate under restrictions. It's kind of hard to look at these things on the ABCC website.
Okay, so just to follow up on that, it looks like from the photos as though there's a large section that has all of these products together versus the fruit center model that has them dispersed throughout the store. Now, that might be just that the photos are incomplete, but that's what I take from the photos that you sent. So I think that's something for the board to think about in terms of the spreading the area around the store.
I would only add that in my experience going into the Stop and Shop in Hingham and in the Wegmans store, I think they're spread out actually, and I'm not sure what restrictions they operate under, but they're not all in one place. The model seems to be to have a large number of these products in one area and then have them elsewhere in the store, particularly as you're heading to the cash registers. For somebody forgot a bottle of wine or a 6-pack of beer, it gives them the opportunity to buy that on the way out. My client's position is that they'll do whatever the board decides. Ultimately, if the board wants to keep the restriction to one particular area because that's what the present license says, that they'll not be pleased with that, but they'll abide by it. They'll abide by whatever the board decrees, and certainly any restrictions on the type of these products or the content of these products, they'll certainly agree to that.
Thank you. Mr. Doyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The photos that accompanied the application related communications are very much appreciated and helpful, and the elaboration extension that Mr. Paulus provided on the brands that could be sold if approved were appreciated as well. Recognizing the floor space, do you plan to change your mix of brands considering the limitations, i.e. ratios of different types of products? Because bringing in several new product lines into a limited area, if 200 is going to be retained, would seem to be a very impacted issue. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that you could share with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Modestino?
I think I'd let Michael address that before I do, if that's okay.
Oh, yes, of course.
So like anything that we sell in any category that we have, there's always what we call dogs, slower movers. So what percentage of slow movers in each category or within, finite categories, there's always products that aren't doing as well as we'd like them to do. And typically when we do a reset, whether it's we'll take a traditional category like cereal. If we evaluate cereal, we're always going to find bottom dwellers that just don't sell that well. It's how we're able to offer new products, bring in new lines, and keep your best movers. So the idea is always to maintain your top movers, your what account for 80% of your sales, eliminate the bottom dwellers, and bring in items that you hope are going to turn over, so you complete and round out the section so the whole section does well. The same applies to the wine beer department, where certainly the department is full, but not all the product we have sells well. So it's a matter of swapping this for that, with the hope that you round out the category and have better movement throughout the category. And that's how you not creating space, that's how you enter or bring in new items.
Thank you. Mr. Wells? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to follow up on what it was described, all the places that I looked are set up almost identical to the fruit center. In the, they have end caps, they have wine, near the registers. Displays are diversified through different areas of the store. This is not I find an unusual request compared to what I found it in Hingham, in Westwood, in Boston, and in other locations with stores similar to this. It was the same type of setup that Mr. McNosa has preferred for his establishment as well.
If I could comment on that as well, I think the idea with the market and wine especially is the whole cross-merchandising aspect, the whole wine and food thing especially. So the idea of merchandising in other areas of the store is pretty traditional in most supermarkets for that reason. So what we're doing is a pretty standard in the industry.
Thank you. Does anyone have any more questions or comments before we hear from public?
Madam Chair, Jennifer McCullough has her hand up. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh,
May have information.
welcome, Ms. McCullough.
Hi, I'm sorry. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I actually didn't mean to raise my hand there, but I'm here if you need me for anything.
Okay, thank you. So if no one has any more questions or comments for the moment, I would like to go to the attendees, and I know that Attorney Mello said he would like to speak. There you are, Attorney Mello.
Thank you, Madam Chair, lady, members of the board. A couple of observations. First, I did go on to your website today and look to see if there was a new plan or floor plan that was filed. Unfortunately, I could not locate it on the website. I went through all of the articles that were there, the listed items, and did not see a new floor plan. Nonetheless, and without the benefit of knowing what is proposed specifically, and I guess the board does have that plan, My concern would be that 2 weeks ago, the board was made aware and the applicant was made aware of the fact that they were not in compliance with the license they had at the time. No effort in the last 2 weeks was made to get into compliance. None of the product was moved back into the 200 square feet. None of the outlying displays were taken down, et cetera. And it would trouble me to have an applicant come before me who was knowingly not in compliance, had an opportunity to correct that, failed to do so, and still not being in compliance, ask the board to grant them an amendment to the license, giving them more product to sell, if you will. Secondly, the mention was made of the petitions in opposition. Those petitions were available at a number of locations in the community. They were all turned in. It wasn't just one individual who was responsible for gathering signatures on those petitions, if you will. In terms of the products, I understand that the products will rapidly change. My question is will the fruit center be back before you again in the near future, saying, well, these products are now 17 or 18%, and we're looking for yet another amendment, hoping that we can keep up with the flow, if you will, on the request for these products. Which brings me to another issue. You've heard from the applicant and agents for the applicant stating that there is a need for these products at their location. What I don't think we have heard from is anyone from the public standing before you saying, I would like to see the fruit center carrying these products. I think that there's been a dead silence in that regard. And it's only been the applicants themselves that have said, we have received requests or inquiries about these products. All in all, I'm going to suggest to you respectfully that the applicant has not met the burden of showing a need, number one. And again, number two, I think the most concerning thing is knowing they have not been in compliance, they remain in non-compliance, seeking yet further amendments on their license. And I would suggest to you that it would not be appropriate at this time to grant that. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mello. I will say that the board has received some communication of support from the public's, some emails, and we did have someone come and speak at the previous hearing as well in favor, but thank you. So let me see if there's any. Cindy Christensen would also like to speak. Welcome.
Cindy Christensen, 59 Colmer Street. I was the person who spoke in favor of allowing this license at the last meeting. So I don't appreciate being having it reported that no one has been in support of this. I moved to Milton from Brookline. The Trader Joe's in Brookline has a full liquor license. They carry things like vodka, bottles of vodka and other alcohol like that. And they also have their wine distributed throughout the store in places like by the cheese or by some of the bread products, things like that. So I really think that this is a no-brainer, and that people that are concerned about this are concerned for reasons that are not legitimate, for things like they don't want the competition, and that's not good for the residents of Milton. That's it.
Thank you. Let me just see if there's anyone else. I don't think so. So, excuse me. I think if there are no further questions or comments for the applicant, we could close the hearing, and so the board can deliberate and take a vote
You need a motion, Madam Chair, to do that?
Yes, I just wanted to see if anybody, I don't think, okay, I didn't know if anybody on the board had any other questions, but yes, Mr. Wells.
I'll make a motion to close this hearing.
Second,
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
yes,
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes,
Ms. Collins, yes, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Magnosa, Mr. Modestino, and Mr. Paulus for joining us. And thank you also to those who spoke during the public comment period.
Can I ask a quick question of you, Madam Chair, and maybe Mr. Dennehy can weigh in on this?
Mhm.
I believe this license was issued in 2004, am I correct?
I think that's right. Let me look at my file.
And if I'm correct, I believe this is the first amendment to it, where they've ever been back to ask us to change it. Am I correct on that, Mr. Dennehy?
No, it's been amended.
Oh, for something like this.
Well, for malt and beer, that was an amendment.
Okay.
Yeah, so, a minute.
yeah, they extended beyond wine to malt and beer.
Right, so 2004, right. And then, yeah. So, and actually.
Saw
it
a
says-
reference to a 2012 amendment, but I can't place my fingers on it right now, what we're looking for.
Madam Chair, Ms. McCullough may have that information and she has her hand raised.
Oh, great. Please
That is
enlighten me.
correct. Madam Chair, members of the board, that Mrs. Conlon is right, that it was indeed amended in 2012 for the craft beer category. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I guess we could take this up in a number of ways. We have a couple of different issues. The fact that they're not in compliance, which was noted last time. And I thought we had asked them actually to correct that in the meantime before we met again. So I was surprised to hear that they didn't know about that part of their permit or their license, but yes, so I guess we have a couple different questions. Do we want to hold to 200 square feet? Would we allow 211? Would we like them to keep everything in one place or follow that sort of marketing merchandising program that they've been following? Would we be willing to let them expand, give them an all alcohol license, but condition it for this specific purpose? Mr. Zulus?
Well, maybe it makes sense for people to kind of articulate if they want where they am. Here's where I am. I think a business owner should be allowed to do business, and so in terms of the footprint and allowing an extra 11 feet, I would be inclined to go forward with that. I am troubled by the fact that they haven't sought to comply with the license, but I take it on good faith that they will do so in the future. So on that score, I like to see businesses do business the way they see fit. And so in terms of the footprint and the additional 11 feet, I'd be inclined to go along with that. My preference would be to do an amendment to the wine and malt beverage license to allow this kind of beverage. My understanding is that's not possible. And so I would weigh in favor of approving an all alcohol license with the restriction to this type of beverage and not to exceed 12%, which is according to what our licensing expert tells us is the definition of a malt beverage, which does not exceed 12% alcohol. So that's where my head is, to allow them to do business the way they want to do business, but to restrict this in a way so that it focuses on the products that they want to sell and doesn't allow for an extension beyond that. That's where my head is on this.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Wells. You
just
can be
following up on
on.
Mr. Thank you so much. follow up on Mr. Zulus's comments. For the purpose of discussion, I'd like to make a motion to approve the application for amendment for a change of license classification for the Fruit Center Incorporated at 338 Granite Avenue, 10 Bassett Street, from wines and malt beverages to all alcoholic beverages with the following conditions. Wine only, with the space for the sale of the beverages being no more than 211. Is that square feet? Current, that should be square feet, am I
That's
correct?
Yes.
211 square feet. To include the sale of microbrew craft beers to be displayed in an 8-foot wide upright. I believe that's an amendment. I'll include also, I'm going to include in that the amendment from October 4, 2012. And the board also stipulates and understands that the request did not include the sale of mass-produced beers.
Thank you. So I have a follow-up question for Ms. McCullough. I know that that it says wine only, and we've been given an amendment that then goes on to talk about these ready-to-drink canned cocktails and a definition of them. However, you know, what we're talking about is not a wine-only license that's then further conditioned and opened up for malt beverages and beer. This is an all alcohol license. So wouldn't we have to name it that way? Wish I'd asked that earlier, sorry.
I think the amendment, the motion has made changes to an all alcoholic beverages with that condition that I just read. I think that's, to Mr. Zulus's point, I think it's the only route we can take. Or no conditions, or denial.
Yeah. Okay. So you're proposing 211 square feet.
That's correct.
May I offer a friendly amendment that that outlines further the definition of these ready-to-drink cocktails?
Oh, that's correct. I actually took out what was in parens, but if you want to, I'm open to any friendlies.
Okay. Well, I think that since Mr. DeLuca signed off on the amendment, which doesn't have defined yet, but a certain amount of square feet of display space within the wine beer department for ready-to-drink canned cocktails defined as a spirit beverage cooler containing distilled spirits and added natural or artificial blending materials such as fruit juices, flavors, flavorings, colorings, or preservatives, and that contains, this says less than 12% of alcohol by volume, but I think we are proposing 12% or less, or no more than 12%.
15, I think, why don't we just amend, why don't we change that to 15 just to be on the safe side?
Well, yeah. Mr. Doyle.
I thought, please correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Chair, that you were saying the 12% would apply to the RTDs only. It wouldn't apply to the wines. They already have that.
Right. That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Ms. McCullough?
Excuse me for a minute.
Of course.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that, in fact, a lot of the spirit ready-to-drink beverages do contain 12.5% to 13%, so 15% is not out of line. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Conlon?
Madam Chair, so I'm not clear if that was a motion that was being made by Mr. Wells or not, but I was just going to offer my thoughts.
It was, and that's what, I'm sorry.
Okay, was it seconded or are we discussing?
We don't yet have a second.
That was my point. That was what I didn't, sorry to interrupt you, Katie. Like that was a motion. We know you made a friendly amendment to it, but no one has seconded it, so.
Oops.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my thought, I'm probably going to want to get the motion read back because I'm not sure I caught all of it with all the changes. But my thought is that I am also a little bit troubled that the applicant has not, in the last couple of weeks, addressed the compliance issue, but my sense from the discussion tonight actually was that they had a different understanding of the 200 square feet than we did, and perhaps that wasn't clear enough at the last meeting. So that the 200 square feet in the town's view was a 200 square foot single spot in the building, whereas the applicant is looking at this as a total square footage throughout the store. So I take in good faith that may have been a misunderstanding. I am inclined to grant the license with a condition, and the motion may have captured all of what I think we need to do, but I really need to hear the motion read back in full because.
Well, would you mind sharing, though, do you have more thoughts that might be helpful?
No, I read what Mr. DeLuca proposed, and I think the only issue was whether it's 12% or 15%.
Okay.
As someone who is more likely to be found in the tea and coffee aisle rather than the alcohol aisles, I'm going to defer to others on the board who might have a little more, who might have a stronger opinion on that than I do.
Right. I drink cocoa, so I would have to defer too on that. So shall I read it back?
Yes, please.
Okay. So remember, it starts out, well, I'll read the whole thing. Wine only, with the space for sale of beverages being no more than 200 feet, which was amended October 4th, 2012 to include the sale of microbrew craft brew beers to be displayed in an 8-foot wide upright open cooler with the wine department of the store within the wine department of the store. The board also stipulated an understanding that the request did not include the sale of mass-produced beer such as Budweiser, Coors, and Michelob. So this would be our amendment. And so Richard is moving, but we don't have a square footage associated with this.
I did. So my amendment was 211 square footage within the store.
Right, that's the total. Okay, so
Because Mr. Lewis said, we need to let him do business. I don't think we need to.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with how it's set. It's not set up dissimilar to how other
right.
companies are.
Right. So this is the motion for now, though.
Madam Chair, that's the restriction, I think, right? But the motion.
Right. This is the restriction.
Okay.
Right.
That's the restriction.
Sorry.
I think Richard's motion was to grant the all alcohol beverage license in place of the wine and malt beverage, which will have to be returned, and with that condition, as I understood what Richard said. Is that correct, Richard?
Thank you.
Yes, I get it. I'm fine with that. Thanks.
Okay, to grant the all alcohol license with the, can you just repeat that, Katie? Because that was much clearer, the way you said it.
I'm taking it from what Mr. DeLuca wrote. Let me just pull it back up.
Okay.
Katie, where are you finding that? Just
Yeah,
so
I don't have.
It's an email, Michael, that came from Jennifer this
Is that
week.
the email with the current conditions and an example of possible amendment?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, and in our notes is the language about approving the application for an amendment for a change of license classification.
Oh, there it is. It's up at the top. Sorry. Okay. Right. So the proposed motion to approve the application for amendment for a change of license classification for the Fruit Center at 338 Granite Avenue, 10 Bassett Street, from wines and malt beverages to all alcoholic beverages with the following conditions. So then the wine only portion that we read, with the change of 111 feet.
211.
211.
Sorry, 211 feet.
Square feet.
Square feet,
Square
right.
feet.
Thank you. We noted that we need to add that. Square feet.
Within the store, within the premises of the facility, like within the store. I don't think we
Right.
need to
So,
articulate.
right. So, but we don't, we're not proposing to change the 8-foot wide upright cooler for craft brew beer.
No, that's fine. I'm fine.
Okay. Within the store. Okay. And the board also stipulated, okay, so then effective May 12th, 2021. If we want to talk about a particular square footage of display space within the wine and beer department or within the store, I don't know what people would prefer for ready to drink canned cocktails, defined as a spirit beverage cooler containing distilled spirits and added natural artificial blending materials such as fruit juices, flavoring, colors, or preservatives, and that contains no more than, I understand, we're talking about 15% of alcohol by volume now.
Well, I wasn't, but just FYI.
Right, well, yeah, it's, the debate is 12 or 15%, so.
I was, just because I don't want to have to go back to this again, and just the way that the representative spoke, he's absolutely correct on, particularly on some of the craft beers, that the alcohols are pretty high. So I think, as going back to Mr. Zeus's previous, I think 15 covers us. And into Jen McCullough's point, I think that way we don't have to address it, and we don't put the applicant in a position where he has to look between 12 and 13. I think we give him a little bit of a buffer to 15. And as he said in his own testimony, he has no intention of going anything higher than 15.
Yeah, although they did say the 12, he did say the 12% covered a lot and covers most of it. And that is the definition for malt beverage, which is, I'd like to keep it within that range. And, given the fact of non-compliance, we may want them to come back if they want to extend it beyond that. So, that's why I'm trying to balance the fact that they should be allowed to do business the way they want, but we should have some level of restriction here that, in my view, that the 12%, which covers the malt beverage definition, and according to them, covers a lot, is what they said, that might get us there. So,
didn't Jen just say that some of them are 13.5?
12.5 to 13.
The 12.5 to 13. That's why I mean the 12. That's why you want to go 14, I'll go 14, then I'll take a % off. But I'm uncomfortable with the 12, given that we know just from our own licensing person that some of them are 13.
Ms. McCullough, you have your hand raised. Would you like to say something?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I just did want to reiterate that Mr. Mignosa, when he had sent in the first letter, I believe, he did specify one of the brands as Cutwater Spirits, and their average is 12.5%. So I just wouldn't want to exclude something that was one of his main reasons for seeking out this amended license. So maybe if he is still on the call, he could clarify on that, but 13% may be more in line. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that the Cutwater Spirits are an average of 12.5. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think, oh yes, Mr. Mignosa, would you like to clarify that for us?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So it's not a deal breaker, certainly. It's certainly one of the beverages we're looking at that is over that 12%, but it's certainly, again, if you feel 12% is the cap, then we'll certainly stay within those limits.
Mr. Zulus?
If 12.5 is in line with the original request, then I could certainly, I think that makes sense.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to add to a comment that was made earlier that I thought Mr. Mignosa gave very good business explanation for the area of the products, et cetera, in that I'm comfortable with what is planned within the 211 square feet. I can live with 12.5% very easily, 13% if we want to round it out.
Thank you. Yes. Ms.
Madam Chair, 12.5% is fine with me then in that case. We may want to say aggregate 211 square feet. My thought on the square footage is actually that it may have made sense in 2004 to have a secluded area in the store. It is the only place that wine would be sold. In light of the amendments and the new product and what Mr. Mignosa and Mr. Paulus indicated regarding practices in other stores and cross-marketing, cross-selling of product, the square footage may be actually less important, but since they're willing to go to 211 square feet, I think we should just say aggregate 211 square footage, which would at least contain it to the level that it's at. If they want to expand beyond that, then they should come back for an amendment.
Very good. So in light of that, I just want to clarify then, do we wish to then keep in that October 4th, 2012 amendment that says that the beer can only be displayed in that 8-foot wide upright open cooler within the wine department, or do we want to allow for something different? Yes, Mr. Wells.
I'm fine with that, Madam Chair. If you look at how they run, they haven't really expanded from that. It seems to work for them.
Okay. Great. I'm also comfortable with 12.5%. I think there's nothing wrong with seeing how it goes, and so I appreciate the argument of well, 15 would create a cushion. But as Mr. Mignosa said, it's not a deal breaker, and it's a new category that that nobody really has a great deal of experience with yet. So we'll see, how it evolves and how it works here if we decide to move forward. So we have a motion. I think now we're looking at 12.5% that does not exceed 12.5%.
Keep my motion at 15, Madam Chair.
Right. Would you accept?
So I'll cut the, I'm just concerned. So I can live with 13. I can live with that because I haven't heard anything above 13. But given Jen's testimony, and I agree with Arthur, I think I want to give them some type of cushion there. I'd be happy with 13.
I could live with 13. I don't know about other people. I don't hear a second, so.
I was going to offer to second the motion if Richard accepted a friendly amendment going to 12.5. I'd like to get Arthur's and Mike's thoughts on 12.5 versus 13.
I think what we've heard is 12.5 gets them what they want. So that's I don't know why we would go above that at this point.
My concern, Michael, is just having been involved in violations in my is that a 13 comes in the door, and we know that Jen just testified to it, and they don't see it, and it slips through, and something happens. That's why you comfy precautionary to just go with the 13 to meet what is in the market.
You could say the same thing about 14 and 15. They should be able to regulate that. And if the product line that they want is 12.5, I think we should just do 12.5. So.
Mr. Doyle?
Madam Chair, I'm indifferent on 12.5 or 13. It's, 0.5. Whatever the board prefers of the two is fine with me. I think it strikes me that if the product lines expand and the alcohol content expands, the firm is going to appropriately and rightfully come back to us and ask to go to 14 or 15 at that particular point in time if it's needed. And right now they've set the line at 12.5. So I'm comfortable in going with their determination.
Richard, I think we have a majority of the board who wants to stick with 12.5. So if you're willing to accept that as a friendly amendment, then I'm happy to second the motion and we can get on to our next agenda item.
Uh-oh. There you are.
All right, I'll accept.
Great.
I'll second.
Excellent. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mignosa. Good evening. Excellent.
Thank you for your time, members of the board.
Here we are. So next, we have a discussion with Northbridge Companies and Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital Milton regarding parcel K2B at 111 Highland Street. And with us, we should have Rich Fernandez, who's, CEO, and
Yes.
the hospital. Hello, Mr. Fernandez. And
Hi.
hello, and your guest.
Yep, it should be Jim Coughlin, Wendy, and Ned Corcoran, I think, is joining, and there might be Sean Bartram.
Let's see, Mr. Coughlin, Mr. Corcoran, Wendy, and Mr. Bertram. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I know you guys have had a long week with town meeting and many other things, and I know many of you I haven't seen in probably 18 months. It's great to see you all. We're thrilled to be here tonight with really the purposes to introduce the Northbridge team. But before I introduce the Northbridge team, who's proposing to purchase the parcel as noted at 111 Highland Street, I wanted to just give a little context, as Milton Hospital's owned this property for over 20 years, and provide a little context of how we got here and a little bit about the process, and then I would turn it over to Jim and Wendy. And the real focus tonight is for you to meet some of them. But I did want to provide a little bit of update. You know, the board for the last 4 years at Beth Israel Deaconess Milton Hospital has been going through a kind of master plan and clinical roadmap to figure out how do we best serve this town and this region as a hospital and as a healthcare provider. We had like I said, it's been going around about 4 years. We looked at both on campus, we looked at using the Highland Street properties. And as you may well know, part of this process led us to open up the urgent care, primary care site in nearby Quincy, which serves obviously residents of Quincy, but also Milton, Randolph, and other areas of our primary service area. So this has been an ongoing process. We did conclude really that the Highland Street property, for a number of reasons, really wasn't part of our long-term plan to put a Milton Hospital facility there. We really are going to focus more on our main campus and then around in the region to serve the populations that we're serving now. So, you know, this process, you know, we actually started a process before COVID with our real estate partners who are Colliers, who work with Beth Israel Lahey Health. And we basically had put it out to market to try to understand who might be interested in this property. But as a hospital and as a board, we really did have kind of 3 primary goals. Obviously, we had a fiduciary responsibility to the hospital. Number 2, ideally, we wanted to find a partner that was aligned with our mission in healthcare, if possible. And number 3, last but certainly not least, we wanted to work collaboratively with the town of Milton and our neighbors. We have been trying steadily over the last 4 to 10 years to improve our relationship with the town and, you know, support different programs, whether it's the library or the schools or the Milton Substance Abuse Coalition. So we really feel like we're long-term partners. As you know, and as I can tell by the rest of the some of the chunks on the agenda, we were not going to entertain something that we thought would be disruptive to the town. And I'm talking, I mean, when we put this out publicly, I can tell you we did get 40B proposals, and I can tell you we as a board and a management committee didn't even look at them. They were not even in our consideration because we know we wanted to be good neighbors. So we worked with them on a process. We've kept, our immediate neighbors informed over the last 18 months and periodic updates to the town. And we wanted to formally kind of come before the whole board, as we have made a decision to go with a company you see here. The president and CEO is Jim Coughlin and Wendy. They each have different roles. Jim, I think, is the president and Wendy's the CEO, but I'll let them introduce yourself. But they've been great partners through this process. We probably looked at 20 different proposals over the last, 6 to 8 months. And I think what you're going to hear from Northridge, and I can tell you one of the reasons we went with them, and they were not the highest bidder. We had big national firms. We had 3-story developers with 80,000 square feet. Northridge has a track record. They're a local, privately owned company. They have Massachusetts roots, and they've worked in communities like Milton to come to a reasonable solution. They'll tell you a little bit about their proposals, and I know they have a few slides, but we really felt like they would be the best fit. And the other unique thing about them, and I know Jim and Wendy will emphasize this, they're not just developers, they're operators. So they're going to be here. Jim and Wendy's team is going to be running this facility. And so what they're proposing is a 70-unit memory care unit on the 111 Highland. They're in their due diligence stage, so we don't have firm plans, but I can tell you every other developer, even in assisted living, was 2-3 stories and twice the density. So what we really feel about Northridge, they've been great partners, and we believe they will be great partners for the town. Number 2, I think they're very respectful and understand how to fit their facilities into the neighborhoods where they provide care. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jim Coughlin. And Wendy, I'm going to get your name. After this due diligence, I'll get your last name, but I'm going to let you pronounce it for the team. And then obviously we're open for questions, but I know you have a lot on the agenda. The whole purpose tonight was just to introduce you to Jim and Wendy and the team and their concept, and know that we will be coming back to this group in various town planning areas, because we will need to get it rezoned. So I'm going to stop talking, put myself on mute, and I'll let Jim and Wendy turn it over to them.
Thank you, Richard. And it is Noah Kunsky is the last name. You notice I just have Wendy there. Wendy is fine. It's a tongue twister. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. We really appreciate you taking the time out of this busy night to have an introduction to what we're doing here in Milton. We're very excited to be working with the hospital and also the town to bring what we feel is a much needed service. We have done a lot of research. There is a need for, unfortunately, memory care for seniors in the Milton marketplace. And Jim and I, as Rich said, we're actually the co-founders of Northridge, and I'm actually the president and he's the CEO, but it doesn't really matter. We are 50-50 partners. We have been in the business now, each of us individually, we've been in senior housing for about 30 years. We came together back in 2004 to form the Northridge Companies, which was based upon really a desire to stay focused on a local region. We believe this is a very personal business. It requires attention to detail. We really wanted to be involved in the day-to-day, and we certainly are. And so we are purely focused on the New England marketplace. We currently have 18 communities, 5 of which of those communities are standalone memory care communities called Avita. The closest one to Milton is Avita of Needham. And each time that we go into a new town or a new community, we are, as Rich pointed out, we are going to be a neighbor, and we're going to be a good neighbor. We're not just a developer. We're not, going to develop something and walk away. We actually own, develop, manage for our own accord. So anyone that you talk to that has been through the process with us, I think you'll find that we're very open. We've already had conversations with neighbors. That's very important to us. We don't have a cookie cutter design. We are New Englanders, so we know what it's like. We want to fit in with neighborhoods. And when we looked at this opportunity, we really looked at the fact that it was a neighborhood already. We wanted to have something that was low impact, low density, but met a need that was in Milton. And that's really why we focused on doing our Avita model. And this gives you an idea of, this happens to be our community in Needham. So you can see that it's, it's on Greendale Ave, but it's surrounded by residential. Actually, the woman who lived across the street really wanted to look across the street and see, what looked like a residential house across the street. And I think we did a very good job. It looks like a cottage or a ranch style home. This particular site enabled us to do, because it was graded, it enabled us to do 2 stories, but because part of what our design is with memory care is to have secured outdoor space. So to be able to do courtyards on every floor. And this gives you an idea of the interior and the finish and our courtyards, lots of light, so important to our residents that live there. If you can go to the next slide. This is an example of another Avita program. And as you can see, they're very different. This is up in Newburyport, and it abuts Anna Jake's Hospital and also a residential neighborhood on the left behind and on the right side. And we worked very closely with the neighbors throughout the entire process in the design, in communication, what's going on during the development and the construction period, and so forth. So again, we are very, very focused on being a community asset, a good neighbor. Obviously, this is a very positive impact. It's, we're not a nonprofit, so there is a tax base that comes to Milton from our community. We're a job creator. This community will create, anywhere from 80 to 100 jobs. We work very closely with community groups in the towns. One of the things that we do over in Needham is we work with the high school, and we also work with St. Sebastian's. And we do seniors to seniors programs, and we do musical therapy and friendly visitors and lots of art type programs with kids in the area. So the low impact is very important to the neighbors, I know, and to the town. Obviously, this type of development has a minimal traffic impact because none of our residents are driving. We do have staff, but the staff tend to be at off hours. So we'll have a full traffic study done throughout our due diligence process and before we come back to the town as well. And then we're very sensitive, as I said before, in our design, in keeping trees, insensitive to wetland areas, insensitive to parking and how that relates to the surrounding neighbors, sensitive to deliveries and those types of things. So you'll see that as we begin to progress through our due diligence period and through our design period, you'll have an opportunity, as well as the neighbors will have an opportunity to see and have input into what we're going to be doing here.
And I would just add that, if you could just, if you kindly change the slide 2, one of the things that we're excited about is really collaborating with BI Milton. The Northbridge companies as an organization footprint really overlays very nicely with the BI Leahy network. So as Wendy alluded to, we have a very strong partnership with BI Needham. We have 2 communities that we own and operate in the Plymouth marketplace that we partner with BI Plymouth. We also have 2 communities in Burlington and Tewksbury. Anna Jakes was referenced earlier, and we are in the process of building a community in Marblehead. I think one of the things that has made us successful as an organization has been going in, bringing our local market knowledge, being very willing to work with communities that are, from the outside world viewed as challenging to develop, and being thoughtful and working with the neighbors, like a community like Needham or Wayland or Milton. We want to make sure that we do it the right way, because I don't want to underestimate, we are going to be the neighbor and the operator of this community for quite some time. So it's very important that we hold true to our promises. We address people's concerns up front. And a big part of that is education. We have already started a process with the neighbors where they are taking advantage of us, bringing them to other communities that we currently operate, so that there's a better understanding. We would extend the same to the town officials, just so that we can educate you of what we do in our communities. It's a very social model. We are, not big operators from the standpoint of cookie cutter approach. We really recognize that we are taking care of somebody's mom or dad, and that's critically important that we do it the right way. So with that, I welcome any questions that you might have, and we look forward to working with you in the not too distant future.
Thank you. Do members have any questions or comments? No, I don't see anything. I will say that we really appreciate your taking the time and bringing this opportunity so that the board can see it, and now all of our residents can also see and know you a little bit, because this will go up on the MATV website. Mr. Wells, I think I saw you raise your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank you to my friend, Mr. Fernandez, and this is a very big venture. We all want to think we're going to be 29 forever, but the reality of it is just not true. And facilities like this are essential, especially taking care of people who are approaching that point in life where they need that daily help. And it allows them to live with a daily dignity and care and a quality of life that we all want to have after we're 29 years old. So I welcome them and I wish them well in this endeavor. And I think this will be something that will be very warmly and well needed for our community. So thank you. Thanks, Rich. Good to see you. And I hope you're training for August.
I will be. PMC or bust. I've been out riding already. Right. Thank you, Richard.
So is the wife. All right. I'll see you. Take care, Rich.
Thank you. Ms. Khanna.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too want to thank Rich Fernandez and the hospital board, as well as our guests from Northbridge for their presentation tonight. And I know you've met with some of the neighbors in the immediate Highland Street area, so thank you for the outreach you've done with the neighbors. There is no question that there's a need for memory care services in Milton. We do have a significant elderly population. So the synergies with the hospital would be wonderful in this case, and it would certainly meet a need that there is in our community and in our nearby communities. And what I like about the plans, and obviously they're very, you're showing us examples of what you've done in other communities, so that there's a lot of work to be done in terms of design and what you're ultimately going to be proposing. But the fact that seems to be I think you said 1-story structure, and something that would have fit in with the neighborhood better than some other proposals that we've had. The town is facing a lot of large developments, and I think this is one that would be a very reasonable scale and hopefully a lower impact in terms of traffic on the neighborhood. So there's a lot of pluses to this. I'm excited to hear about this opportunity for the town and our residents, and obviously a long process ahead as you go through the different boards and you meet further with the neighbors. But this sounds like a good opportunity for the hospital and for Milton. So thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for having us.
Well, thank you, and you're welcome, and we look forward to hearing more.
Appreciate your time.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Night. Next agenda item, excuse me, discussion town comments on proposed 40B development at 728 Randolph Avenue. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we received a letter from Marion McKettrick, who's legal counsel for the abutter at 718 Randolph Avenue. So we have already received some comments. This is a 40 unit, would be a home ownership 40B, so that the 20% of affordable units only would be on the SHI for anyone who's curious about that. If the board does not object, I'd like to take public comments first. Okay. So if anyone would like to comment on this project eligibility application, and again, just to explain a little bit, because we've had several of these, but if you don't live near them or you haven't been curious, you may not understand. Project eligibility application goes to a subsidizing agency. In this case, it's Mass Housing, but there are some others that a 40B developer could apply under, and that's Chapter 40B of the Mass General Laws that allows for the building of affordable housing that basically circumvents local bylaws and regulations for affordable housing to be built. And the board's responsibility at this point is to make a response to this preliminary kind of application, which should not be the application then if the PL is granted, but it's not necessarily the application that we would see that goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals to actually get their comprehensive permit to create a project. I don't see anyone with their hands raised. So at this point, we did receive this afternoon draft comments. I took another look and our letter is not due until the 7th. So we have additional time to review it if we'd like, but I'm happy to have a discussion about the letter now or the project as the board would like. I don't hear that anybody feels the need at the moment to comment on the draft. Is that correct, Mr. Dennehy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just thinking of scheduling. So this board next meets on May 26th.
Right.
The first meeting in June would be June 9th.
Right. So if Mr. Busby also offered for us to that it could be extended for a couple of weeks if we felt the need. But thank you for reminding us that our next meeting after the 26th is on the 9th. Mr. Doyle, were you raising your hand? Oh, you're muted, Mr. Doyle.
I did it again.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for your patience. Madam Chair, on this point, I was just wondering if you had a preferred date for members to comment on the draft letter.
Well, it would be most advantageous to get it wrapped up on the 26th. I think if we could, if we couldn't, we could always ask for that extra time. I think Mass Housing is a bit underwater themselves. And so that's probably where that offer of the additional 2 weeks, but I also realize that the board probably would like to tidy up whatever agenda items we can and move them on their way. So I realized too, we had a site walk, but because it wasn't posted, we could not gather and speak to one another. So I'm not sure if people would like to make comments on that. Mr. Zulus, I don't know if I know that you couldn't make it. I don't know if you ever had a chance to see the property, or if that's something that maybe we could arrange for you.
I intend to do that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Conlon?
Madam Chair, Tim Serwinski, the planning director, sent over a draft letter for us late this afternoon. So I took a quick look at it, and I'm glad we're off to it. We've got it started.
Right.
I thought Attorney McGettrick's comments on behalf of her client, Mr. Driscoll, were very good, and some of them can be incorporated into our letter, hopefully. Given the hour, my sense is that, and the fact that we've been in 2 weeks of a town meeting that's gone on for late nights, I would suggest we defer our conversation on this until the 26th, if that's agreeable to others.
Yeah, yes, Mr.
It's
Zulus?
certainly agreeable to me. If we're going to do that, I wonder if we should take Mass Housing up on their offer, just in case we need it. We may not need it, but we may, if they've offered it, maybe we accept it.
Right. Well, we could ask, and then we always have the option of getting it in earlier if we'd like to. And the thing I like about that is that we may want to go back and watch the planning board meeting, or ask for some of the letters or things that were used in drafting Mr. Zawinski's letter. So that let's defer that then. And Mr. Dennehy, would you be able to reach out to Mr. Busby and ask him for those 2 extra weeks he offered? Okay.
That's what I was going to suggest, but with a 5-night town meeting and everything else that's going on, I hope he would understand. I'll reach out tomorrow.
Thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Zawinski would appreciate it. He's got a lot on his plate.
Right.
And with your permission, Madam Chair, maybe have it submitted on the 10th so that we could have final comments and approve a draft on June 9th.
Yes.
Even just a couple of days extension, if he wants to give us more, that's fine.
Right. I mean, it's due on the 7th. So, right. That's probably fine.
Okay.
That's probably fine. What do you think?
Would we be better off asking for 2 weeks?
Right.
Make the request for that and see what his response is. That way we allow enough time.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So item number 7 is 40B development proposal updates. I don't have any updates that I don't think the Zoning Board of Appeals has actually been able to meet because we have had town meeting for 2 weeks just about. So does anyone have anything that they'd like to say? No. Okay, let's move on then. And at this point, we are at discussion and approval, the reorganization of the select board. Before we begin, I realize that it's 8:45, but I beg your indulgence because I'd like to say a special thank you and a farewell to our excellent administrative assistant, Hillary Waite, who will be heading to a new position in a neighboring community. Hillary came to us from her role as the town's environmental coordinator, where she did just a wonderful job as well. And Hillary, you brought us new ideas, ingenuity, resourcefulness, and as well as, poised, professional, kind, and warm demeanor to the office and our meetings. And you brought also with that a healthy dose of pragmatism and directness, which I personally really appreciate. You stepped into the tech breach as COVID came upon us, and you helped the board function without missing a beat. I've enjoyed working with you and getting to know you, and I think I speak for the board when I say you'll be missed very much. And we're also tremendously excited for you and the opportunity ahead of you. So congratulations and best of luck and success. And I'd like to give the board an opportunity to say something if they'd like as well. Yes, Mr. Zulus?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just will add, you alluded to it, but when COVID hit with full force a year ago, March, and we had to refashion our meetings and our presentations. And we had to refashion everything quickly and on a dime. People stepped up, and Hillary was one of the people who stepped up big time and made it possible for us to continue to serve the public in those circumstances. And so, the camaraderie is born sometimes when you're in the heat of battle, and there was certainly the case there. And I certainly am greatly indebted to Hillary for all she did, particularly in that circumstance.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any way to top what either of you have said or to say anything additional. So I'll just say thank you to Hillary, and you will be missed. You've done a lot.
Agreed.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Wells.
Madam Chair, thank you. And to concur with the comments of yourself and Mr. Zulus and our colleagues, Kate. You know, Hillary, I remember when you came to the DPW and you came with this zeal and this youthful energy. And I used to think to myself, how can someone get so motivated about trash barrels and recycled containers and stormwater fees? And you told me early on that you hoped one day that maybe you become a town administrator. And clearly in the time that since you've left the DPW and come to our office, you've done everything that to me exudes what a great leader will be one day. You know, you've taken on every chore pre-COVID, through COVID. You've had that smile and wit. You enrolled in the Suffolk plan, and you've been going to Suffolk every Friday for as long as I can remember. And as sad as I am to see you leave, you are taking another big step, although at a very young age, towards fulfilling that goal that you have. And I will not be surprised one day when I'm sitting in a rocket chair, maybe even living in an assisted living facility on Highland Street, to see the name town administrator, town manager in front of your name. So thank you for everything, and you're gonna have a great time. Braintree's gain is our loss, but you've left your footprint here even in such a short time. So good luck and God bless.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members, if I may.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to say thank you to all of you for those very kind and generous remarks. I think you all know I consider public service a real calling for me, and I appreciate everything I learn from all of you, not only in these meetings, but every time we're working together and learning how to serve the public and how to do it better, and especially how to do it through circumstances we might never expect to experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes,
I'll
Mr.
just
Doyle.
add to these great comments, an acknowledgement of Mike Dennehy's mentorship of Hillary and her responsiveness to that mentorship. It was a great partnership and very productive for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Yes, Mr. Dennehy.
Member Doyle, thank you for that. I echo all the words here today. Very thankful that Hillary introduced herself to the town, and we've been able to cherish everything that she is. I did make a deal with her. Those of you who don't know Hillary that well, she is an avid Boston Bruins fan. And I told her we would make sure we meet at a special location on Boylston Street for their Stanley Cup parade. So we will see her there, and we wish her well in the meantime. So thank you, Hillary.
Thank you. Okay, it's hard to go on after that, but okay. So we're going to reorganize the board. I do want to say item 15 is related to this. We broke it up because we realized that this is kind of a long meeting with a lot of guests, but really that was just meant to ask members to start thinking about their their current committees and where they might want to serve. So that is not going to, a discussion on that's not going to take place today, just so people in the public know, especially if somebody was waiting for that agenda item. And that will go on the following agenda. So the process for actually reorganizing the officers is to open the floor for nominations, and then nominations are made. A member accepts or declines, and then we keep repeating that as necessary, and then we vote. So, and my proposal is to start with the chair position, go on to the vice chair position, and then the secretary. And Mr. Doyle?
Madam Chair, on that note, I would nominate Katie Conlon for chair of the Milton Select Board.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor? Well, Ms. Conlon, I don't know if you want to vote for yourself.
I'll accept, but I think you have to first ask.
Right,
for
sorry.
nominations and close the nominations, but
Right.
thank you, Arthur. I will accept.
I didn't follow my own protocol. So, okay, thank you for accepting. So, all those in favor, Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, Ms. Conlon?
I'll abstain.
Abstain, yeah. Okay, so we have a new chair. So I would like to nominate Mr. Doyle as the vice chair.
I'll be happy to second that.
Mr. Doyle, would you accept the
I'm honored
nomination?
with the nomination, and if you'll accept me, I'll accept your nomination.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon? Oh, wait, no, you're the chair now, so I should just step back, shouldn't I?
Well, you've started this one. Why don't you finish this?
Okay, I'll just finish it for old time's sake. Sorry about that. Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, Mr. Doyle.
Abstain.
Okay, and I'm finished.
Okay, well, thank you. Then I will step in, but we're going to have something to say about Ms. Collins as soon as we elect a secretary. So our next office to elect is a secretary, and I'm going to invoke the privilege of being a new chair. And since this involves a lot of minutes, I'd like to dump the minutes on Mr. Zulus. So I'm going to nominate Mr. Zulus to be secretary of the board.
I'll second.
And I will accept being dumped on.
Do we have any other nominations? Seeing none, then we'll close the nominations. And all in favor, Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Ms. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
I'll abstain.
and myself, yes. Congratulations, everyone. I look forward to working with you, with all of you in different capacities. But I'd like to acknowledge our former chair now, Melinda Collins, for all of that she has done during the past year. And we sent over a little gift as a token of our thanks to Ms. Collins that hopefully she has opened or will open and will appreciate. It's a tradition that Mr. Zulus started a couple of years ago that we're continuing. So Melinda, thank you for all that you've done for the board. Not only did you represent us well at town meeting these past 2 nights of lengthy discussion and debate and long nights, but you've been a great chair really during this past year where we've had a lot of challenges. Picking up the baton from Mr. Zulus during COVID, your entire time as chair has been characterized by remote meetings and COVID issues and housing issues because we've been so busy on the housing and 40B front as well. So it's an enormous amount of work as a member of the volunteer board, the select board, but being the chair is a lot more work. And Melinda, I know that you spend an awful lot of time as a member, never mind the chair of the board, and you do all of your due diligence and you read every line before you get to a meeting of every material that's in the package. So you put in the effort. You're the chair of the housing committee. You come to all the finance meetings. I know you're on other committees that I'm just forgetting what they are right now, but I want to thank you for all that you've done to organize the meetings, run the meetings, help the board to move projects along during the course of the past year, especially in the housing front. and in the COVID matters, which hopefully we're as we go into this next year, we'll be able to go back to an in-person meeting. We do have a brief discussion of that on the agenda for later on this evening, but it's been a challenging year and a very busy year, and you've been a good steward on the board and represented the board well and led the board well, and I want to thank you for that. And others may want to weigh in and acknowledge all that Melinda Collins has done for the town of Milton and the board during the past year. Mr. Doyle.
Madam Chair, having mentioned mentoring a moment ago, and now completing my first year on the board, I want to thank each and every one of you for your guidance and mentorship during this past year. Katie, Richard, Michael, and particularly Melinda. She's an unsung hero in my eyes. She works very much behind the scenes and takes very little credit for great and small things that she does. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the counsel and advice that she has given me. Thank you, Melinda, and thank all of you as well.
Anyone else? Mr. Zulus?
Well, I'll just say I think you've done a great job, and I look forward to your continued contributions. But I think you've done great this year.
Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Former Madam Chair, I think that, when we first met, I remember looking at your car and seeing your license plate. And it kind of sums up so many things about you. And for those who don't know, in town, Melinda's license plate is kindness. And you inject that kindness into every aspect of your leadership. And it is a style that through thick or thin, COVID and non-COVID, good and bad, smiles and laughs, and even sometimes during heartbreak, you managed to find that. So as I said to you earlier today, that year flew by. So thank you very much for everything you've done. I couldn't imagine, I said this to you at our very first meeting 3 years ago when we were at town meeting, you were sitting beside me and I said, this is the first time you went, and it was your first time at everything. And you've quickly and skillfully adapted yourself and embraced every aspect of this Milton government, and more importantly, what it means to live and work in this community. So I thank you for that, and I'm very proud and honored to call you my colleague on this select board. So congratulations and thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. You're all really kind, and Richard, I've told you that my license plate says that so that I'm nicer to people when I drive.
As being a policeman, if you get stopped for speeding, I don't know a cop in America would write a person with that license plate a ticket. So that's a good thing.
Well, thank you all. It's really kind. And I really do view us as a team, and I've taken something special away. Well, every year I've been here from each of you, but you've all supported what I've done as chair in your own ways. And so I do really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to this next year together, especially if we can be in person and seeing each other. So I can't thank you enough. I really can't, because I don't know how I would have done anything like this without you. So, oh, wow, it's red. I love it. Thank you.
It has your name on it too.
Wow. And the dates. Thank you so much. And it doesn't say COVID-19 either. But thank you so much. It's really thoughtful. And I can't wait to use it on my family when they're getting a little too out of order. So thank you.
Well,
again.
Speaking of your family, hopefully they'll have a little more time to have you back now that you're no longer serving in this role, although I know you're still chair of housing and on all the other committees. So
well,
more time for that.
Yes. No, I'm looking forward to that, to making more progress on things and learning more things. And I'm just very, very grateful to all of you, and to Mr. Dennehy, who was always there with sort of a a pep talk when it was needed, and insights that only he had, as each one of you have insights that only each one of you could give. So thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is a COVID-19 update. We have a couple of categories here. Mr. Dennehy, do we have anyone for Mike's 5K, or will you address that?
I'll address that, Madam Chair. So John Mulcahy was trying to attend this night's presentation, had a little bit of car trouble, so I can take the ball with that. So understanding that COVID restrictions are starting to diminish with the positive numbers. I think everyone saw yesterday. First time there were no deaths in Massachusetts since last June, which is a very good sign. I do see our parks filled with children and adults every evening now that spring has finally arrived to our town. I do see a lot of compliance with masks. I was up at the high school and track and field and rugby was sharing the same field. It was very pleasant to see everyone with their mask, and when they were socially distanced, understanding that they didn't need their mask, but I think people are becoming welcoming the new normal, which is to have a mask and put it on if you're outside, if you can't socially distance. So Mr. Mulcahy is understanding of this. He's suggesting that they hold the road race on Saturday, October 16th. This is Mike's 5K. I spoke to the police, DPW, and the fire department. They're all in full support of that. The only thing on the calendar that day is the Household Hazardous Waste Day at the Public Works Yard. But this would be far, far away from that. And that one, they should not intersect one another. So I spoke to Caroline Kinsella today about this. On May 29th, the governor is going to further relinquish some of the restrictions. Road races are currently allowable. But we're going to get some more guidance as we plod through the spring and summer months to see how this is run. If you remember, I believe the marathon has been pushed out to September this year, and they're allowing 20,000 runners. So yeah, so we've kind of checked all the boxes at Town Hall, and we think it's something that's really going to work. Obviously, everybody on this board understands and appreciates what this 5K does for the town, both on the day and afterwards, with all the support they provide to the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. They made donations to the Wildcat Den in years gone by. So a great event for our town, which is really growing every year. Obviously, last year there was a bit of a hiccup with COVID, but the Mulcahy family is adamant. John said he could appear at another meeting to give more information if he'd like, but basically the logistics are Saturday, October 16th, Cunningham Hall, and we'll work through all of the specifics at a later date, but just he'd like to get it on everyone's calendar and permission to make sure that we observe all the social distancing and CDC requirements that will be in place at that time.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the use of streets and ways on October 16, 2021 for Mike's 5K to crush substance abuse.
Second.
Motions are made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor. Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for
Dennehy.
that.
We also
Thank you
have
for that.
block parties, and I think you wanted to address the board on block parties.
Yes, similarly, Madam Chair and members of the board, we did receive our first block party request for Willoughby Road. Some of them are coming in earlier this year. This is normally a fall undertaking. In my history as town administrator and prior to COVID, there was a multitude of them. I think any weekend in the fall, late summer, you could see many neighborhoods having these. So I think the idea is people want to get outside, people want to socialize, understanding that on May 29th, the outdoor limit will go from 150 to 250. So that's something that we'll take into account for this early June block party. But just looking for permission from this board, and we've spoke with the health department about this. Shouldn't be a problem with social distancing at these events. A lot of these events are done on sections and pieces of roadway and not just a small contained area. I know the block party that I participate in every year touches actually 4 streets, and we have a little quasi roundabout that we tend to congregate on. But there is plenty of space for these block parties. And now that COVID seems to be turning in the right direction, I think we'll start seeing them sooner rather than later this year. So just looking for permission to authorize these as they come into the office.
Make a motion to allow the town administrator to approve block parties as received. Do you want a date on that, Michael? Like an effective date for it to start, or just effective immediately?
I think the Willoughby Road one is the first or second Saturday in June. So nothing, nothing date specific, maybe June 1st or something like that.
Okay.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Then if not, all in favor, Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Discussion of eventual return to in-person meetings. Ms. Collins and I, in preparing the agenda, talked about maybe having a brief discussion about starting to think about this, and nothing imminent, but to talk about an eventual return. The hour is getting late. We've all had a long couple of weeks of town meeting. We could put this off to a future agenda if that's what we'd like to do, but the thought was just to introduce the topic. And obviously, our normal meeting space was the Council on Aging, and that's a building that's populated during the daytime by seniors, and they're the most affected population, so we'll want to take that into account. But does anyone have any thoughts on, or would you like to put this off until a future meeting? Mr. Dennehy.
I thoroughly appreciated the productivity of this board meeting socially distanced in the Council on Aging for town meeting. I thought it was very productive. A little less productive for the special town meeting, and I think from time to time on Zoom, someone's microphone isn't on, or someone's talking and another person isn't acknowledged. And I think possibly if with the permission of this board, maybe sometime in June, start to get the 5 of you and myself and Hillary's successor in a room, and then continue to Zoom. But I think it's a little more productive for the board to accomplish their mission in person.
Other thoughts? Anyone? Mr. Zulus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that makes sense I look at this in two tranches. One is us being able to meet again in a socially distanced way, and perhaps having the public by Zoom, or having us Zoom to the public, if you will. And then later on down the road, having a situation where we can have the public and have an opportunity for the public to be in the same room. The difficulty with doing that right away, obviously, is we never know how many of the public is going to show up. And we have had meetings before where there are more than 100 members of the public or more who've shown up for meetings. So I think that kind of stepped approach does make sense.
Ms. Collins.
I know that I should say I've heard that there are maybe some complications with having that hybrid approach. So one of the things that I'd like to hear about, not at this meeting, but how difficult it is for MATV to do that, and whether we could do some kind of a, I don't know, for registration system. I don't want to get into too much, but I would like to get back in person. And I just would like to have a little more information on technologically how difficult a hybrid would be.
Maybe this is something that Mr. Doyle and I can talk with the town administrator about, and COA director as necessary, and MATV. In watching some of the school committee meetings, they're still using the masks even though they're in person, and that it does make it a little bit hard for the Zoom audience to hear the audio. I've found anyway. So there are several things to think about. Anything else on this topic before we move on? Okay, the only other item under COVID is just a reminder to everyone that the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association is having a service of hope to commemorate past year of COVID and the lives that have been lost and all of the sacrifices that have been made and people who are the heroes of COVID, the healthcare workers. That will be on Sunday, this Sunday, May 16th at 3 o'clock at the gazebo. And our board previously voted to participate in that ceremony. I believe it's also going to be televised and probably by Zoom, Ms. Collins, is that correct? By Zoom?
Madam Chair,
I was going to say, Mr. Dennehy checked in with MATV earlier.
MATV will be on site to film live.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right, item 10, we're deferring. We'll meet with the town clerk on re-precincting at a later date. Item 11, we voted last night. Item 12 is a discussion of the annual town meeting and any follow-up. And again, it's getting late, so I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on this. Mr. Dennehy. You're muted, Mr. Dennehy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The FY22 Senate Ways and Means proposal came out today, budget proposal. In that, the town nets out with $62,101 more than the House Ways and Means budget, which was submitted about 3 weeks ago. So more positive news out of the State House. So obviously want to thank Senator Timmelty for his work on that, and previously Rep. Luke Rokley and Rep. Driscoll for their work to improve financially for the town on the governor's budget. So again, $62,101 more to the town based on the Senate Ways and Means Committee's proposal this afternoon.
Okay, well, that's good news. Thank you for that. It was a productive town meeting. Even though it went on for 5 nights, and we had a lot of debate, just getting the budget passed, getting the 3 planning board articles, which one of them was a citizen's petition for Winter Valley, but the trees and the floodplain article all passed. I think were major advancements for the town. And Mr. Zulus and his committee on the broadband, that's an exciting visionary topic, as you discussed and presented last night, Mike. So a lot of progress made at this town meeting, a lot of important things passed. And again, Chair Collins represented us very well at town meeting, and I'm sure could use a good rest after 5 nights of town meeting. Do we have any follow-up that we want to do, or would we like to put this on a future agenda? Mr. Doyle?
Future agenda, Madam Chair, would be my
Okay.
suggestion.
Okay. All right, seeing no other hands, then item 13 is going to be deferred. Item 14, we have a request from the Wakefield Estate for a 1-day liquor license.
Madam Chair, I'll make approval to I make a motion to approve a 1-day liquor license for Dog Days Beer Garden to be held at the Wakefield Estate.
Second.
On June 19th.
Sorry, on June 19th, 2021.
Seconded by Ms. Collins. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And myself, yes. I have to remember to do that now at the end. I'll forget. Right, item 15 has been deferred as Ms. Collins stated. Item 16 is meeting minutes. And I thought, for some reason, I had thought we had already approved the April 14th and 28th minutes, but I guess we didn't since they're in our package.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of 4/14, 4/28, 5/3, 5/4, and 5/6. Do you want me to put a count this subject to any final addendum, or you want to just leave it as is? I'm sorry, subject to any final edits.
A second.
Okay. Any discussion or any changes? If not, all in favor, Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And myself, yes. And thank you to Hillary for other than the minutes of tonight, these are probably some of the final minutes you're going to be drafting for us. Our future meeting dates are May 19th. We have a meeting with hopefully with all of our elected officials, and they're probably not most of them, but at least some of them maybe, and their staff members. That's Wednesday, May 19th. Then we have a regular meeting on the 26th, and June 9th and June 23rd are our June meetings. And with that, we're on to the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I just want to take a quick minute to thank former Madam Chair Melinda Collins from the bottom of my heart. No one took more phone calls this year than her. Recently passed her. We were out inspecting some land for a potential solar farm around town, and we made our way through pretty much every street in town and bumped into Miss Collins and her husband. And I thanked him for the time that we've stolen from him and his family with his wife. And she couldn't talk to me because she was on the phone with someone. So again, always on the phone, her unwavering leadership during this year. And it's been one of the craziest years in government. And I've been in government for almost 30 years. So there were so many uncertainties. She was a true civil servant. She helped our community through so many things behind the curtain. She never looks for the fame and glory. And she has certainly made Milton a much better place with her labor. I think it was a labor of love, what she did last year. And I'm sure she's going to continue with that this year. But I just want to really thank her for a wonderful year and one of the most difficult times in government. So thank you, former Madam Chair.
I'll second that. Chair's report. I obviously don't have a report, but I did receive an email today. I think we may all have received it. And just want to congratulate a Milton resident and a graduate of Milton High School, Daniel McAuliffe, who happens to be the nephew of our town treasurer, I learned. He has achieved the top leadership role at Mass Maritime Academy of being regimental commander. So quite an honor for Mr. McAuliffe, and we congratulate him on that and wish him well in his new role at Mass Maritime Academy. I don't think we have any topics that were not reasonably anticipated, Ms. Collins. Do you have anything to add as the former chair?
Well, if people would indulge me, I do want to thank everybody in the community who participated in the Milton Muslim Neighbors Ramadan food and other sundries drive. I understand that it was quite successful, and here we are at the end of Ramadan. So I think it's a good day, actually an appropriate day to say thank you, even though it wasn't our project. It's just good to see people come out and do something really positive together.
Does anyone have a report to make? Mr. Doyle?
None, Madam Chair, at this time.
Mr. Zulus?
No report, Madam Chair.
Ms. Collins, anything else? And Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I emailed Mr. Dennehy today. It's just, most people don't know that, and especially this year, it's kind of been diminished somewhat in press coverage. This is National Law Enforcement Police Week, and actually May 15th is National Law Enforcement Peace Day, an official day of memoriam that was signed by President Kennedy in 1962. And there are over 21,000 police officers' names etched, law enforcement officers' names etched on a memorial in Washington, D.C., 2 of those being members of the Milton Police Department that were killed in 1940 and 1944, both gunned down. One of them never to be solved. Henry Farrington was killed up on Upper Canton Avenue and wasn't found. His body wasn't found for a couple of days. But, sometimes, especially in this past year, it's very difficult, law enforcement. And now, obviously, my own profession, but coming from a police family, you realize there are many great people and there was a lot of greatness. I think we have to look no farther. If any of you seen the video that was taken this week of the young female NYPD officer that applied a tourniquet to the leg of that young 4-year-old boy who was shot in Times Square. 3 tourists was shot in broad daylight Saturday. And the video of her running with that child in her arms for 2 blocks to intercept an ambulance to transport that kid, which in fact saved his life. And since then, 4 police officers have been shot and killed in this country. So I want to echo something that a Milton resident, David Shea, wrote on Facebook the other day, is that we have a great police department here. An overwhelming majority of people who do great things. And yes, they are human beings, and sometimes, as all humans do, they make mistakes. But this is a very special time of year, and I think that we need to take a moment to remember the names of Edward Lee and Emory Farrington, who were both shot and killed, Milton police officers in this town, and whose names are memorialized forever in that National Police Memorial. And I'd ask if you indulge, give us a moment's silence, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thank you, Madam Chair, former Madam Chair Collins, for allowing me to write that too. I think it's the first time I've ever written to Mr. Dennehy asking for something to be brought up like this. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Okay, public comment response. We didn't have any public comment this evening. Future agenda items. Anyone have anything to add to the, I'm sure, growing list that Hillary is keeping? Okay, if you do, please notify Mr. Dennehy. Then there being nothing else on the agenda, other than executive session, I will move that we enter executive session for the following purposes: pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, believing that having such discussion in open session would have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the body, specifically with respect to 101 Blue Hills Parkway and 334 Edge Hill Road, and to approve meeting minutes pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 22F. We will not return to open session. We will adjourn from executive session.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Collins? And myself, yes. So we are now in executive session.